We'll do a review in Likutei Sichos in Chelek Chof, volume 20. This is the second Sicha from the portion of Vayigash, Vayigash base. This Sicha, the Rebbe discusses in great detail how did it end up with 70 people that came to Mitzrayim. The Posik says there were 70 people. How did we get the 70 people? The various different possibilities the Rebbe brings down, the different meforshim, whether we counted Yochevet, that she was just born then at the gates, so she is the one that made up 70, as Rashi brings down. We have other places, meforshim, that Yaakov made up the 70, even though that's not pshat. And the Rebbe goes through all the various different meforshim and explains the ideas behind them. Why is it that we count Yochevet, or seems to be a new Jewish-born child to be the 70, or we should count Yaakov, who was the oldest, who is the most elevated. And then the Rebbe goes through also that it has to do with the name of the Meforshim. Arichas Gedola, a great length. The Rebbe explains all the details here, and we'll go step by step. Aleph. In Hashlomas HaMispor from the Shivim Nefesh, to make up the number of 70 souls, the Pasuk says, Kol HaNefesh Goimer Habo Mitzrayim Shivim. All the people that came to Mitzrayim were 70. Was the Torah Rechon Ois that the Torah enumerates? The Torah only counts 69. We're missing one. There's a 70. We find many opinions in the medrashim of our sages of blessed memory and in the commentaries of the Torah. In Gemara it states, "Loit ein day in medrash," and one opinion in the medrash, as Yochevet dot mashlim given the minyan from Shivim Nefesh, that Yochevet, the daughter of Levi, she completed and made up the number of 70 nefesh. She was born as they entered in between the walls of Egypt. So she is counted, so she's not counted before, but she ended up being born right there. So she is also one of the 70 that came to Mitzrayim. She became pregnant, Levi's wife, during the with Yochevet during their travels, and the birth was Bein HaChoimes when they entered into Egypt. That's the language of the Gemara. Und das ist euch das Rashi b'pishrushe al haTorah b'pshuto shel mikra. This is also Rashi's opinion in his commentary on the Torah, and that means that is the simple meaning of the verse. Loit pirkei de Rabbi Lezer unadeye in midbar in medrash, but according to the way it's stated in the Pirkei of Rabbi Lezer, and that's also another day in the medrash, is Hakodesh Baruch Hu nichnas imohem b'minyan, that Hashem entered with them in the number 70, because together with the Yidden, the Bnei Yaakov descended to Mitzrayim, the Eibishter went along. So the Eibishter is also counted, and he is one of the 70. Kama meforshe haTorah nemen on. There's also many of the commentators of the Torah, they accept, and there's also an opinion like this in Medrash, as their minyan for Shivim Nefesh is given zusammen mit Yaakov, that the number 70 Nefesh included together, including Yaakov. So these are three different opinions. One, that Yochevet, and two, that it was HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and three, that it's Yaakov. Darf man verstehen. So we need to understand what is the svara v'tam from the Chilukei Deis. What's the idea? What's the reasoning of the different opinion? Wer es wird areingerechnet in the Shivim Nefesh, who is included in the 70 souls. Noch mehr. But everyone wants to point out this is not just this one or that one, which one we count, but it seems to be totally extreme. Do we count a little child that was just born, which seems to be on the lowest level of the scale, or do we count the Eberster count? Nochmer, nicht nur seinen Zeideis Schönes. Not only are they different opinion, nor the chilik zwischen zij is min hakotza lakotza. The difference between them is from one extreme to the other extreme. Lloyd der they as Yaakov at Maslim given the minion, according to the opinion that Yaakov made up the number upshita, Lloyd der deya as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and obviously, according to the opinion as HaKadosh Baruch Hu nichnasim mo'em b'minyan, that it was Hashem that entered into the count. Is there minyan mole for shivim nefesh? So to get the full number of 70 people, 70 souls, nishtam geworden durch dem Hechsten. This was made up through the highest under dem Sholem von the alle in dem Sholem von the Alayin Nefesh, and he, the one that made it complete, made up the 70 for all the 70. It was the highest of the people. Dagegen Leute deyas yechevet werd gerechnet. But as opposed to the opinion that it's Yechevet is counted zwischen the Shivim Nefesh amongst the 70 souls come to us. So then it turns out as the Hashlom is given to the Madrega Achitachtoina, that the makeup was through the lowest step. Abbas Yisrael is Ersh Geboren geworden, a Jewish girl, a daughter, a Jewish girl that was just born. Lidasa ben Achemis, she was born between the gate, between the wall coming into Mitzrayim. Who makes up that number 70? It's either the greatest, Hashem, Yaakov Hashem, amongst the 70 who were counting, or it's by the youngest. In addition, how come Rashi chooses to learn like the opinion of Yechavet? Rabbi asks. Rashi versus Mefarish Pshuta Shel Mikra. Rashi, who goes by the simple meaning of the verse, learned as in the Mispar von Shivim Nefesh, that in the number Shivim Nefesh wird reingerechnet Yechavet, that it includes Yechavet welche wird der Mond b'Mikra erst in Shemos. She is first mentioned in the Pasuk in Shemos by the name of Yechavet. And we didn't learn yet about her. So why does Rashi choose to say that it was Yechavet? Unit Yaakov. Why wouldn't Rashi say that Yaakov made up the 70? There's eine Mefarish, Kamo Pashtone HaMikro, as many of those who explain the simple meaning of the pasuk, they say it was Yaakov. Now, the Rebbe says in the Psukim, actually, it's hard to say that it was Yaakov in the text. But the question becomes, so why Taka don't we include Yaakov? It needs to be explained. Why? So Rashi maybe has a difficulty because in the text, it seems like this are all the children of Yaakov, not Yaakov himself. The Rebbe explains, from Pashtus Loshen HaKosov, although from the simple language of the Pasuk, Rashi can't really say that it was Yaakov, the one that made of 70, because the Pasuk says, Kol Nefesh Bonov Ubnoisov Shloshim V'Sholish. That 33 of his sons and his daughters, 33, is mashma as Yaakov nit nichlal in the Shloshim V'Sholish. So he's not part. It says it's his children. So if we're talking, if the 33 is his children, so the 70 are his children. So he would not be included in the Shivim Nefesh. So that's from one place. But it says Shloshim V'Sholish, it says clearly his sons and daughters. And the same thing is, so, but the same thing is another passage. So that alone is probably the Shivim is also doesn't include Yaakov. While Derech says move on from the Mdiuk Loshna Kosov. If you look the precise, we can refer from the pasuk. It says Kol hanefesh lebeis Yaakov abo Mitzrayim Shivim. All the souls to Yaakov's home. So Yaakov is not accounted abo as thus made the nefesh of the Yaakov. That means the soul out Yaakov. So that's hard to say for Rashi to accept that Yaakov was included. Umefurish because of it actually says the pasuk by Yihi Kol Nefesh Yoitze Yerech Yaakov Shivim Nefesh. The pasuk says elsewhere, not with regards to coming in over there in Shemais Perigala pasuk. Hey, over there it says that the 70 was Yoitze Yerech Yaakov, so there has to be 70 besides Yaakov. So while Rashi Take cannot say this, that it was Yaakov counted in the 70, but the question is, how come we Take don't count Yaakov? This alone requires explanation. Was it their time? Was Yaakov Alain is nitarayin in Nispor from the Ayin Nefoshes? What's the reason that Yaakov himself did not go into the number of the 70 Nefoshes? Why isn't he counted amongst the 70? But he also came to Mitzrayim. Zusammen mit Kol Nefesh Bonov B'Noisov, together with all the sons and the daughters of Yaakov, he came in as well. So why would Vitake not count him as well? So we need to understand the inner meaning, as the Rebbe will explain later on, what it means to count Yaakov amongst the 70 and the purpose of the descent to Egypt, how it plays out that we don't count Yaakov and we do count Yocheved, as the Rebbe will explain later on about this. His base. So the Rebbe says that the Rebbe says he thinks that we should be able to explain that we explain the difference of opinions ubahagdim hadiyuk in the lishonis by first introducing the exact precise languages from Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer Medrash Verashi that they use that the makeup that it took place by the Rash Shlomo durch HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'Yecheved, when they say that it was made up by HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Yecheved. In Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer steht der Loshen. In Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer languages Ukshebo legvul Mitzrayim Nisyachasu kol haZechorim Shisha v'Sheish. So then when they came to the boundary, then all the males were lineage, their lineage, and it came out to 66. Yosef Ushnei Bonov, and Yosef and his three sons, 66. Yosef makes 67. The two sons, Menashe and Ephraim, make 69. Hadeshivim Chosarachas. So you had 70 minus 1. And then it says, Uksiv b'shivim nefesh yordu avisacha b'mitzrayim. That with 70 souls, they descended to Mitzrayim. So Ma'os HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what Hashem did, Nichnes imam b'minyan. So he entered with them. So he became the 70. V'olu l'mispar shivim, and they ended up having the number 70. The Kayim Hashem Nemar, this was to fulfill that which Hashem said, Anoichi Ered imcha Mitzrayim, I'll descend with you. Hashem went down with them. So that's the language that we find in Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer and Medrash Rashi. Mashenkin in Medrash stellt sich von Loshen HaKosov over there. The Medrash places himself on the pasuk. He says, "Kol hanefesh habo v'goymer," that all the souls that came, ubnei Yosef asher yulad loy shivim. But there it says that the bnei Yosef that were and when we call hanefesh habo Mitzrayim, and the bnei Yosef that were born were shivim. On his mefayer zu yechabet sheishlima minyan shel Yisrael b'Mitzrayim, that she fulfilled in Egypt. It means, when was the 70 counted in Egypt or coming down to Egypt. Coming down to Egypt, that means Hashem. If it's in Egypt, then it's Yechevet, das heißt. In Pirkei der Rabbi redt sich beiker wegen der Yerida von Bnei Yisrael in Golus Mitzrayim, that how they descended into the exile of Mitzrayim is those was HaKadosh Baruch Hu nichnas imoim b'miyan. So that's why Hashem enters with them. Anochi Eiret imcha. Hashem is descending with you. We're talking about coming to Mitzrayim. So it's a hechrech. We need to have Hashem there. Anisinas koyach to the Bnei Yisrael. That gives power to the Yidden. Azayindig b'yirida begolus Mitzrayim, that as they are in the descent in the exile of Mitzrayim, so they can them koishi hashibut. They should be able to overcome the difficulty of the enslavement. Wissendik as anochi yiridim Mitzrayim, that Hashem descends with them to Mitzrayim. Und der Riber is euch der Loschen, and that's why the language is nichnas imam. He went in with them. Or the Loschen medrash hishlim imam. Either Hashem entered with them or completed because Hashem came in there. The Rebishter is kavyochel mit zei zusammen. Hashem is together with them. Mashe enke benegele yechevet is the gosha vaybo Mitzrayim shivim. That those who were in Mitzrayim, those who came to Mitzrayim shivim, the ashlomas haminyan fun ayin nefesh in Mitzrayim, that fact that there is a complete number of 70 in Egypt. Nit verbunden mit der Yeride in Mitzrayim kusha shibu. That's not connected to the descent in Mitzrayim, the difficulty of the enslavement. It's not the coming and the difficulty, it's just how many were in Mitzrayim. Und in them is Yechevet given, die was Shtima Minyan Yisrael Yisrael. Over there, Yechevet made up the number in Mitzrayim of Israel. Basically, to give the Yidden the courage to descend Mitzrayim, they needed Hashem. He was the number 70. But later on in Mitzrayim itself, who were? Then Yechevet, and Yechevet made up the number 70 over there. This answer is not really so smooth. The Rebbe says, why would Yocheved, who is the one who really suffered through all the exile, most of the tribes, or all of them, as it says, they died before the difficulties began in Mitzrayim. But Yocheved, who really suffered, why would she not be part of those who descended to Mitzrayim, the Boyim, but Yerida to Mitzrayim, but rather the ones who were in Mitzrayim? Yocheved is given from the Einzige. She was one of the only ones from the Boyim Mitzrayim that came to Mitzrayim, which was Shivim, was is by given them Koishi Shibud Mitzrayim. She was by the time when the difficulty of the Egyptian enslavement, as we know the story, Yocheved and Miriam were the ones that used to take care of the babies, and while Mitzrayim Paro said to throw them into the river and to kill them. So basically, they were there's man was is given tachlis hayirida in Golus Mitzrayim. They were during the time then it was the total descent in the exile of Egypt. Is vikumdos? So how come was ir is vikumdos was ir hashlomes haminyan, that the fact that Yocheved makes up the number is the medrash mekasher davke midishivim nefesh abo Mitzrayim, that it ties it to the 70 souls that came, that were in, that have come to Mitzrayim, unit bitten b'shivim nefesh yordu avisachah Mitzrayim, but not with the descent that takes place with the 70 nefesh. So why would that be that way? In other words, Enoch and Nami, that she was there in Mitzrayim, she didn't do the descent But conceptually, Yocheved descended to Mitzrayim because she was in the tzuras of Mitzrayim, and she was the one really that was there, lived by the tzuras of Mitzrayim. So why is she not counted in those who descended, but rather those that were in Mitzrayim? Also, we need to understand. The Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, it says, Nisyachsu kol hazachorim shishim v'sheish chulu. The pasuk says there was 66, and then there was the other Yosef and his sons, which is 3. Yosef, Nash, and Ephraim made 69. And then the 70 is the way what we're discussing now. But in the pasuk, it doesn't say the males because it wasn't just males that made up 66. The one that made up the 66 also included Dinah and Serach Bas Osher, 2 females. So when the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer says the number 66, he says Nisyachasu kol hazachorim. He specifically said the males. And the question is, why would the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer say that the Zachorim zwischen die Shishim v'Sheish werden gerechnet nicht nur Zachorim, amongst the 66 that made up the number 66? We also counted not only males, not Eich Dina v'Serach Bas Osher, also Dina, who was Leah's daughter, and then Serach, who was the daughter of Osher. So why does it say, why does the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer use the language of Zchorim? Nisyachsu kulam shishim v'sheish. But why say the Lashon Zchorim? How do you make up 66 with not just of males, it included 2 females? And then the Rebbe said there's another connection between, another issue with the Torah using the feminine language and the masculine language in some of the other psukim. And the Rebbe brings down, Neus Gimel, Mefarshim stellen sich auf dem, was in Posuk kol hanefesh habo Yaakov Mitzraymo. So this Posuk, that it says, all the nefesh that came to Yaakov to Mitzrayim, state der minyan beloshen nikeva. The number is used in the feminine language. We say kol nefesh, all the nefesh, it says shishim v'sheish. That's the number. Sheish is a feminine language. If it was masculine, it should have said kol nefesh shishim v'shisha. Shisha is the zocher. Sheish is the nekeva. So the mefarshim ask, why does it say shishim v'sheish? And then contrasted, that's the total number of the 66 that came down besides Yosef. Then when the pasuk goes to the next pasuk and adds Yosef's 3, on a pasuk shala achrize, it says ubnei Yosef betas gezok beloshen zocher. And when it says bnei Yosef, it says in a masculine language, it says nefesh shnayim, not nefesh shtayim, if it was. So over here, it uses the masculine, shishim v'sheish. Over here it uses lashon nekeva. Over there he uses, by bnei Yosef, he uses the lashon zachar. And the Rebbe says that because we'll see in a minute that the by Leah, as the Rebbe asked before in the end of his Gimel, that by the included in Neshef Shishim Vashesh were not just males, so that's why it uses a feminine language. Mefarshim answer. But by Bnei Yosef, we're talking only masculine, so that's why it says Shnayim. But before the Rebbe brings the answer, the Rebbe brings another difference in masculine language and feminine language. We already found earlier, this is already the total. When the Torah counts by Bnei Leah, Bnei Zilpah, by the sons of Leah, Leah's sons, and Zilpah state their minyan beloshen nikeva. Over there, the number is in a feminine language. It says shloishim v'shalosh, not shloishim u'shloisha. That's by the Bnei Leah, and that includes all with the sons, and by the Bnei is sons and grandsons and grandchildren. And by Nezilpa, it says Sheish Esrei Nefesh, not Shisha Osor Nefesh. It says Sheishas, which is a feminine language and not a masculine. So why? This is by Bnei Leah, Bnei Zilpa, but they both were counting over there Dina, who's the daughter of Leah, and Zilpa. We're counting Serach Bas Osher, which was from Zilpa, and by Bnei Rachel, Bnei Bila, which were only counting males, Loshen Zohar, because over there the pasuk says Kol Hanefesh Arba Osar, so it doesn't say Arba Esrei, which would be a feminine, or we say Kol Nefesh Shiva, which is also a masculine versus a feminine, would be Kol Nefesh Sheva. Shiva with the hey makes it a Zohar. So the answer is, so the Mefarshim answer, because if the number includes females as well, the number uses a feminine language. If the number consists only of male, then they use a Zohar language. And they answer, and it's answered. As vibal nichnesu nikeves imohem b'minyan, since females entered with them, they're part of their number. Suvishun di b'nei Leah ver gerechnet euch Dina. Amongst the sons of Leah, we also count Dina. Und suvishun b'nei Zilpah, and amongst the children of Zilpah is also Serach Achoisam Bas Osher, their sister Sarah, the daughter of Osher. Shtei deriber beloshin nikeva. That's why it uses the feminine language. Ash enkein babnei Yosef. Babnei Yosef over there, val derech zeh babnei Rachel ubnei Bilha. Over there were only males. Was dort werd ken the keves nit gerechnet, steht der minyan beloshen Zohar. That's why it says Zohar. So they answered the difference of the languages, whether who's included in the number. If it's only males, then it says males. But if it includes males and females, then we use the female language. But the question is, first of all, that's against the laws of Digduk, that when you include both, you would still use the masculine language, even if it includes both. You only use the feminine language if it only includes females, but not when it includes both, especially that the number of females is minuscule next to the regular number. Why would we use here? So the answer is not so smooth. Der tirutz is aber nicht glattig. It's not smooth. If der cheshbon is koilel size chorim usayne keves, if this counting the number includes both males and females, demult verta pikloli hadiktu genutzt. If you use the rules of grammar, then we use the misper beloshen zachar. We use the language in the masculine. Ubefrat beniden de dan, especially in our case, as the Nikeva seine Miyuta, the Miyuta, that they're a minority of the minority. Zwei zwischen the Shishim Vashesh. When you count 66, it's only two. And eine other zwei zwischen the Lamed Gimel B'nai Leah, because over there, if it's just B'nai Leah, it's just Dina, or if you also count Sarach, then it would be two. But B'nai Zilpa, it's certainly only one, the B'nai Zilpa. So, question is, why does the use here the language of the feminine? Because there were some females part of that number. So the Rebbe is going to explain that there is, in this whole idea, the Sikha, that there is a significance to the accomplishment, that it was the masculine, it was the Malchus, as the Rebbe will explain, that needed to go down to bring about the elevation, the preparation for the Golus, and in order to go out. As the Rebbe will explain now, what is the purpose of this, the whole descent into Mitzrayim? The number 70, what the meaning, significance of the number 70, as well, that it corresponds to the nations of the world or to the Shivim Zkenim. Let's go look inside Dalet. Der Bir Bazeh. So the explanation in this, in the Mispar Ayin Nefesh von Eden gefindt man Bechlolus Zwei Inyonim. In the number 70 souls of the Yidden. So generally speaking, we find two ideas what that means. Aleph says that they are correspond to the 70 nations. Was seinen verbunden mit der Ayin Sorim Shalamaylo, which are tied to the 70 spiritual, their officers, the angels, sort of the Sorim of above, 70 nations, 70 Sorim. And Beis, sie seien verbunden mit der Mispar Ayin by Eden. They're also tied to the 70, which is by Eden, which is Shivim Zekenim, the 70 elders that we had in the Pasuk, the Psukim in the Torah talks about the 70 elders that Moshe Rabbeinu should gather, and the Sanhedrin, which was Sanhedrin of 70, Chulu, that's the number 7. B'chlolus, in a general way, these two numbers, einen das die zwei Inyonim u'pu'ulos, was haben sich gedarft öfter durch der Yerida von der Ayin Nefesh b'Mitzrayim. These are the two matters and actions that needed to be accomplished through the descent of the 70 souls in Egypt. What they need to accomplish. Apu'ula b'negeya zu Eden, a act as it is connects to the Jews, the Ayin Zkenim, the Shivim Zkenim, the Sanhedrin, unapu'ula in Welt, and also an act that it needed to impact the world. Golus Mitzrayim is doch gewende hachone zu Matan Teure v'Kabbalah Sateure. The exile of Egypt was the preparation for the giving of the Torah and receiving of the Torah. Hashem giving the Torah, receiving the Torah. Was b'matan Torah hat sich aufgetan b'negeya zu Eden. What by Matan Torah accomplished was done, was accomplished then as it relates to Eden. As anoichi havaya is geworden elikecha. I, Hashem, became elikecha. So anoichi havaya, which was distinct, but now by Matan Torah it became elikecha. Koichacha v'chayusecha. That became your power and your vitality. That's the accomplishment by the Yid. Benegea der Welt bechlal and Matan Torah, Kabbalah Satera, as it pertains to the world in generally, the Kishur v'chibur von Elokus mit Welt. That was the tie and the connection from godliness with the world. Demult is bottle geworden die Geseide, as Elyonim lo yerdu letachtoinim. Betachtoinim lo yalu le'elyonim. Then this decree has been negated. It was bottled before there was a separation. The uppers did not go down to the lowers, and the lowers did not go up to the upper. The spiritual and the physical were distinct and separately. There was no connection between the higher and the lower. And Matan Torah, they connected. As an introduction to all this that took place by Matan Torah, so therefore it needed to be that exile for Mitzrayim. Both as it relates to the Jewish people and also as it relates to the world. Mitzrayim prepared the world, this exile of Mitzrayim, to the following connection that was made later on by Matan Torah, which Hashem connected with Yidden, Anoichi Hashem Elikecha, Kochacha v'Chayusecha, and Hashem's connection with the world. Hey, so this will give us a little bit of an understanding what the connection when we go down to Mitzrayim. How are we able in Mitzrayim to connect? Was it either to the Yaakov, the Ovis, or through Hashem? This explains why the descent to Mitzrayim, in order to prepare for that connection, needed, according to one opinion, Yaakov, and the other opinion, Hashem. Let's look inside. Hey, Razal Zogun, our sage of blessed memory, say, as ha'ovis hein hamerkava, that the forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they are the Merkava. They are the Merkava, the chariot for Hashem. Kola v'reihem, kulom hayu, says the Lashon in the Tanchuma, I guess. No. The Lashon in Tanya. The Lashon in Tanya is that Kola v'reihem, all of their limbs, kulam hayu kadoshim umuvdalim min yonei lam hazeh. They were holy. They were separate from worldly matters. Kol yimeim, all their life. They were a chariot, which means they were connected always to Hashem. They weren't caught up in this world, in Elam Hazeh. They were constantly always subjugated and tied to godliness. Und der Riber, and therefore, is by Zeh given Hashros Hashchina Begilui Mamish. So the divine rested by them openly, actually openly, because they were a keli and they were bottled to godliness. Ukidei die Bechina soll nimshach werden euch zu den Neshames Tachtonis. In order for this level to extend also to the souls that are on the bottom, on the low, from the level of the others to influence into the lower souls who are not Merkava souls, which have a connection to the world of Bri Yitzira Asiya, unlike the others which were connected to Atzilus, a Merkava. Also to the level of the souls that are on the lower level in Asiya. Verdos Oivgiton durch die Shvatim. That is accomplished through the tribes. Und wie sie werden voneinander geteilt auf ein Nefesh. As the tribes are branched out to 70 souls, they bring down the offices, their Merkava, their level, to the lower souls. Warum Madregas Hashvatim, because this level of the tribes is al derech v'elekus vert nimshach in olam biyah. This is similar as how godliness extends into the world biyah. Aber kidei di hamshacha zol onkumen zu jeder neshama. But in order for this hamshacha to come to every neshama, it comes through the shvatim, the ayin nefesh. But we wanted to reach every soul. Is nit genug das was es wird nimshach al idei hashvatim v'ayin nefesh. It's not sufficient. This that it is drawn down, comes down, extends through the tribes and the 70 soul. Nor es hat euch gedarf sein, sei Yerida from the Eretz Yisrael in Golus Mitzrayim. But it needed to also take place, that descent from Eretz Yisrael into the exile of Mitzrayim. An ort, in a place where Zetzich Nitalakus, where godliness isn't visible. Adrab, on the contrary, it says Amokim von Helen vehesta feilekus. It's a place which blocks and obscures godliness. Und as euch, wenn wir gefindt sich in Mitzrayim, that also as you are in Egypt, an Eretz was ein yiras shamayim beinehem. It's a land there is no fear of heaven there. So you're going down. We needed to come down to Golus Mitzrayim. They needed to go down into a very low place where there is no Yerushalayim. Dort werd der Herr bei jeder mibnei Yisrael. And even there, it is sensed by every one of the Jewish people, the Nekudas HaYahadus, the point of Yiddishkeit, the Maminim, they're all Yidden are believers. That needed to take place, that even in this lowest place, in where there is no, that they will be b'maminim. Hodos gepoiled, that impacted as bechinas halakus was by the office, that the level of godliness which the office had, the being a merkava, so nimshach v'nizgala werden zu jeder nefesh mi Yisrael, should extend and be revealed to every Jewish soul. Unat soif kol haderus, until the end of all generation. Afila to amadrega chitachtoina, even to a very low level, needed to come down all the ways. And the Golus made it that when a Yid is even at the lowest level, he should still have that godliness, that emunah in his struggle, in his lowest of levels. The bechinas elakus was his nimshech v'nizgal geworden zu jeder Eden. The level of godliness that extended and revealed to every Jew, is their inyan ha'emuna. That's the idea, emuna, belief. The emuna pshuta von Eden in the Ebersten, the simple faith of a Yid in Hashem. But das hat sich ausgedrückt, that expressed itself in Vayamin Ha'om, when Moshe Rabbeinu came to them in Mitzrayim, and they believed. As the Eberster, the people believed what? As the Eberster can, Hashem is able to, unvet, and will say, Arois them from Golus Mitzrayim, and will take them out of the exile of Egypt. As beim Ebersten seine Nitoke, Meniz v'Yikuvim Chaz v'Sholem. But there is nothing to stop and prevent Hashem, God forbid. That's the Amunah. That's what they believed. That was Nimshach, the Amunah Pshuta, to every Yid in Hashem, that there's nothing to hold back Hashem. But this is the Pirush HaPnimi for Maimar Chazal. This is the inner meaning of the saying of our sages of blessed memory. Le'nigalu, that the Yidden weren't redeemed, Yisrael, the Yidden weren't redeemed, Avisenim in Mitzrayim, Elo b'schus ha'emunah. Only in the merit of belief. Das ist nicht kein Zeitgering in schus. That merit of belief is not a side. They believed and they were redeemed. Nor der Mekuven v'tachlis and Golus Mitzrayim. That was why they went into the exile. They were redeemed because of the Amunah in order to get the Amunah. The Amunah was the reason. It's not because they had Amunah and therefore they were redeemed. But the redemption was in order to give them the Amunah. Their Mekuven v'tachlis from Golus Mitzrayim. That was the intent and the goal of Golus Mitzrayim. Und das ist gewähnt der Hachone zu Matan Torah. So that's why that was the preparation to Matan Torah, this descent and the Amunah that the Yidden experienced in Mitzrayim. That Hashem is able and will save them. That Amunah, simple faith, prepare them to Matan Torah. As es soll werden, Anoichi Hashem Elikecha Asher Etzisicha Meretz Mitzrayim. That I am God, your God, to an individual, to everyone to take you out of Egypt. By Yeder Eden, Atzef Kol HaDoros, by every Jew until the end of all generations. So their field werden begilui, as Havayis Elikecha, should be felt openly that Hashem is your God. Kechacha b'chayusecha. He is your power. He is your energy. Noichi Hashem Elikecha. I am Hashem Elikecha. Dos wird getan. Durch Sicha Meretz Mitzrayim. Hashem takes you out of Eretz Mitzrayim. Arois genommen werden from Mitzorim Megvulim. Hashem took us out from the Mitzorim Megvulas. We went to Mitzrayim, and then He took us out of there. Meaning He takes us out of those limitations, so we can experience that Emunah even in that level. That is, Hashem takes us out, and that's why it becomes Keichacha V'Chayusecha. So now, the whole purpose, the Rebbe explained here, of the descent of Mitzrayim is to reveal that level, to prepare them for Matan Torah, to reveal that level of Amunah, the level of the Ovis, and that should be inherent in all situations. And that can be accomplished through the tribes, because in the number 12 or the number 70, through them. But we need some protection in Mitzrayim, that Mitzrayim should not be able to get to them. Vov. Bald as the Yerida Mitzrayim is verbunden davke mit ayin nefesh, since the descent to Mitzrayim is tied with 70, the number 70, which means the tribes as they spread out. This haste, v'madreges hashvotim, the level of the tribes as it extends below. It expands to lower than they themselves do. Is that his chalkos for Yud Beis Shvatim, in as they're divided into 12, now we're dividing it into 70, which means it goes further away from the tribes into their descendants, which means a further separation. Is kidei as Mitzrayim erves oretz. So in order that Mitzrayim, which is the nakedness of the land, meaning the low of the earth, a very low place, soll nit meilim sein in ganzen Eifun nitzutz alakus, that it should not obscure, block totally the godly spark. Hat in the ayin gedarft nimshach werden. So within the 70, needed to bring down such a level and step which is on itself higher than limitation and boundaries, so to protect that it doesn't get caught up from the order of Ishtalshus of Biyah. So a level which is higher than dressing up in the land of Egypt needed to come down. We needed a Yaakov over there. because we need that power to protect them as they're going down. So as they're being further away from the tribes, further from Yaakov and further from the tribes, divided into 70, and the spark should not be consumed, covered up, and blocked. You needed something to go down with them, which is higher than Mitzrayim. This is the Nesinas Koyach and the Ayin Nefesh. That is what gives power to the 70 souls. As euch beridos the Mitzrayim, that even as they descend to Egypt, sollen sie nicht werden in Elam Agolus. They should not sink into the hidden, the blocks of exile. And this is their Tam Hadeya, and this is the reason of the opinion that says as Yaakov, that Yaakov was Madregose, is Atzilus. Yaakov's level is the level of Atzilus. Hecher von Hishtalshlus, he is higher than the order of Hishtalshlus, the Biyah, but Mamshich, Maslub given, which means he completed, is Nimshach geworden in the Minyan von Ayin Nefesh. To Maslim means he made it up, meaning that he was drawn into the number of the 70 souls to protect the 70 souls not to become overwhelmed in Egypt. That's the one opinion. The zweite day is over Moshe, but the second opinion adds, und in Pirkei Drablezer steht bloß die day, and Pirkei Drablezer is only this opinion, that it was Hashem himself. As HaKadosh Baruch Hu hishlim imoim es aminyim, that Hashem completed, made up that number. Vibal das kol inyoni from Golus Mitzrayim. Since the entire matter of exile of Egypt is kidei zol nimshach veren, Madregas office is in order that it should extend the Madregas of the forefathers. That's what the Golus Mitzrayim. It should come down into the Golus, the level of Yaakov, of the Ovis Bechlal, Ovis Henena Merkava, the general. Give them the Amuna to bring down. Ubichlalim Ubiikar, and generally speaking by the Ovis, and mainly Chines Yaakov Chirsheb Ovis, to Yeder Neshama, that every Neshama should get it. Afilu Shebe Madrega Chitachtoin, even on the lowest, a Neshama which is on the very lowest level. Kendos Nitzain in an Oifun. So then this is not able to be in a way as in Goldus Mitzrayim soll nimshach werden und sich herren akolponim behelam b'chinas shel Yaakov olam ha'atzilus. So then you can't be in a way that within the exile of Egypt, you're going to hear, and Yaakov is nimshach there. Okay, he's one of the 70, even if it's behelam, akolponim behelam, b'chinas Yaakov olam ha'atzilus. If Atzilus is felt in the lower level, in the Biyah, in the lowest of the levels, then it's not really a low level. It's not really blocked. It's because Yaakov is there. One of them is their Golus Nidkein Emes Helam. Then exile is not a true block. Ubemele ken sich nit ausführen der Tachlis inyan Hagolus Kenal. Then the ultimate purpose of Golus cannot be accomplished if Yaakov is there, because if you sense Yaakov, then it's not really exile. And it's not the ultimate that within the exile you should be able to reach the level of Yaakov. If he's there, it doesn't get Mashen came. But if we complete through HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Seviv Kol Almim, which surrounds the world. It's not only that it's higher than Ishtalshlus, but it's an Amakif, it surrounds the world. Ken sein mit Yidden in Golus, it can be with Yidden in Golus. Nichnas imam b'minyan, he goes in with them with their count. V'afal pikein, so he can be there, and still herter sich niton, and it still is not sensed. The Eberster, the Seviv, the Makif, can be there and still not be sensed there. He's Afi Herzachton, but it is Be'etzim Kodesh Mudul. Umufresh, because he's in essence wholly separated and distinct. And therefore that does not conflict, it doesn't contradict the block of Golus that the Eibishter in a way of Makif is there. Vorminyone is as herzich nit ken gilu yalakus ben because Golus means that there's no godliness sense in the neshama, and it doesn't sense it because from the level of Makif it doesn't have it. So that's why the two opinions, we needed to protect them, so we needed to make up the minyan. We needed to be nimshach. But one opinion says that minyan was nimshach, was it like was Yaakov, the Bechir, the general, the main of the Ovid, the Bechir Shabbos. But the other opinion says that would take away from the goal in the darkness, because having Yaakov there means that it's not totally obscure. Only the Soiv, the Makiv, the Eibishter, Nichnas Imam can be there and not obscure, and they still have that Helam Hagolus. So previously, the Rebbe explained what is the idea of Yaakov being Mashlim, the number 70, to protect the 70 in their descent in Bia, in Mitzrayim, and what it means that the Eberster was there, and the difference between the two opinions that Yaakov can accomplish that, or that you need Dafke, the Eberster. Now the Rebbe is going to explain what it means that Yechevet being the feminine and being Sfiras HaMalchus, she gave them the emunah, that level of emunah. Zayin. Aber das, was Yechevet hishlima minyan shel Yisrael b'Mitzrayim. This, that Yechevet made up, completed the number of the Yidden in Mitzrayim. As Yod gepoil nishleimus in the minyan from Shivim Nofesh, that she impacted the makeup, the completeness in the number 70 soul, is as in them, so that is in this, as soll by ze sein v'nizgala der inyan ha'emunah, that by the other 70, by the 70, by all those who go into the Golus Mitzrayim, that it should be by them and revealed by them the idea of the emunah, the idea of belief. The Bir Bazar. Explanation of this. Isha, the chalal, woman, generally speaking, is meramezes of Sfiras HaMalchus, hints to the Sfiras HaMalchus. Was in Malchus seinen do zwei Ketzoves dike inyonim. Malchus has two opposite corners, matters, two opposite matters. Ragleho yordos chulu. The feet of Malchus descent all the ways, even to the negative, was mitzad them, is done in a smokum of Golus, that because of that, there is room for exile in Malchus from that aspect. Li'idoch, verzi ongerufen, on the other hand, Malchus is called ve'emunah kol zois, that this zois, the level of Malchus, feminine, is emunah. Mitzad sfiras ha-Malchus kum der inyan ha-emunah. That because of the sphere of Malchus, comes the idea of emunah. As Malchus Malchus kol elamim. The belief that it is Hashem's Malchus is the governance of all worlds, as their chayis metzias kol ha'elamis, that the vitality and the existence of all worlds, nemtzich from midas malchus yisbarich, comes from midas malchus, blessed malchus. So it can go down on one extreme. Malchus can go to his old descent lower, and also that it gives you the highest level of Amunah. Well, derech is given by Yocheved. Was also similar by Yocheved. Yocheved is geboren geworden bei Pesach Mitzrayim. She was born at the entrance to Egypt. Nicht wie die andere von der Shivim Nefesh, not as the others of the 70 souls, but sie seien geboren geworden früher. They were born earlier. Und Davke sie is given in einem Zman from Koishi Hashi, but then it was specifically Yocheved that was there during the difficulty of the slavery. As we said before, she tended to the children that were born during the decrease, Aberli Idoch. But on the other hand, she was the one that suffered. But on the other hand, is there the idea of redemption came through her son. Moshe brought the Geula. Was Erod gepoilt to Megali gewend the Amunah Ba'al Yidden. He impacted. He revealed the Amunah Ba'al Yidden. So she was in Golus, and she was the one that was born in Golus, right in the start of Mitzrayim. But yet, her son was the one that impacted and brought about the Amunah. And also, she herself, zusammen mit ihrer Tochter, together with her daughter Miriam, the Miyaldos HaIvriyos, they were the Jewish midwives. Mit Zeir and Hoge from the Chayenes HaIlodim, with their conduct, they vitalize, they give life to the children. So it's not just through Moshe, they themselves, they educated and direct by the Eden, and they woke up by the Eden, the Amunah b'tochen b'Hashem, the belief and trust in Hashem. Not to become affected by Parah and his decrees. So Yocheved's being of the 70 is because Yocheved is this paradox from the two extremes. On one hand, because she is Malchus, on one hand, it can go down to the lowest level, and on the other hand, it has the Amunah to keep you on the highest level. She was in Golus herself, Yocheved, but then her gave a birth to a son, Moshe, and she herself helped the Yidden with the Amunah through Vadechayenas Hailodim. She gave them that life. Ches. This the Rebbe circles around and comes back to the idea why we use a feminine language by the number is because that's actually the entire purpose of the exile, is that feminine connection from the two extremes, from being in Golus and yet the extreme Betochen. Ches, v'apizeyesh levayim, das was der minyan from Shishim Vashesh. This that the number 66 from Kol HaNefesh Abol Yaakov Mitzrayim. We say all the nefesh that comes to Yaakov Mitzrayim, und al derech zeh shloishim v'sholish from the Bnei Leah, as we said before, it's not shloishim ushloisha, it's not shishim v'shisha. These are all levels of feminine, sheish and sholish. It is said in a feminine language, Bal iker inyona upulosa from Golus Mitzrayim Emuna. Because the main idea, what is the main effect? The act of accomplishment of Golus Mitzrayim, which is Amuna, is verbunden mit Bechinas Nekevas Firas Amalchus. That's tied with the level of feminine, with the Firas Amalchus. As we see literally in actuality, as the inyan ha'amuna is begolui mer banoshim viba anoshim, that the idea of amuna is more open by women than by men. Ubechlolus is das verbunden mit die Shvotim. So it's all about feminine. It's all about malchus. That's why the number is a feminine number. But generally speaking, it's tied to the Shvatim versus the others. The Shvatim are a Merkovet Hator. You have the Merkava before. The Ovis were the Merkava. That was the upper chariot, but they are the Merkava Tato, meaning are Merkava to Bechinas Malchus. They are a Merkava to the level of Malchus. Thus haste, which means they're Teuchen Inyan from Bechinas Nukva, this idea, the contents, the concept of the level of feminism is Bechlal Badishvatim. Generally, this is the tribes are versus the Ovis, which is the Merkava. They are considered the level of Nukva, was einen verbunden mit Malchus, because they're connected to Malchus, wie sie kommt herab in Ilmes Bia, as Malchus descends to the worlds of Bia. Mashenkin the Ovis, as opposed to the Ovis, seine Merkava Elo. They Merkavta Elo, they're the upper chariot in Atzilus. Hecher Faris Lapshus in Bia, that's higher than dressing up in Bia. Und al derech ze is Madrigas Yosef Kidu. Similar is also Madrigas Yosef, which is in the upper level, in the level of Atzilus. But the Shvatim are mekabel from Malcha as Malchus comes down. Because the Riber state their misper beloshen nekeva. That's why it says in a feminine language, even though we're talking about tribes, males, but because they're general, they're nukva, shishim v'sheish, ba'ale andere shvatim. But not Mashenki Menegea to Yosef. Over there, it changes back to Yosef, it says in the masculine, because Yosef was not on the level of the other Shvatim. So therefore, by the other Shvatim, it says in a feminine language. But Yosef was in Atzilus. The Protus Aber. But when we go through specifically, the Shleimus in the Mispar for Shivim Nefesh, Abom Mitzrayim, what is the wholesomeness of the 70 that come to Mitzrayim, is there in their Yerida verbunden mit Yechevet, that's associated with Yechevet, B'chinas Isha, the level of Isha, Shemelda ben Achenes Kenal, she was born between the walls in the Isha, in that level, and still has the Amunah, and that's why that is what makes up the number 70, to bring down the Amunah in the most toughest of the situation. So, here we explain, that's why it uses the feminine language, because the tribes in generally, as opposed to Bnei Yosef, which is the level of Atzilus. And the Rebbe now comes, it's even more difficult, seemingly, why the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer says Chorim, when here we're emphasizing it's all about the feminine, Loshen Nekeva, the Emunah. That's the Golus Mitzrayim. Tess says, Bleib die Shaila. The question remains, from was is Medaik zu sagen in Pirkei Rebbe Lezer? So why does Pirkei Rebbe Lezer say Nisyachsu kol hazchorim shishim v'sheish? That all the males were 66. Well, the Pirkei Rebbe Lezer isn't talking about the level of Amunah. Enochenami, es redt sich dort nicht wegen dem Inyan HaAmunah. It's true, it doesn't discuss there the Aliyah of Amunah, was is Shaykh Ba'ish Omer, which applies more to a woman, Amunah, is the Chaber in Zechorim Mudgesh, but in the males, it emphasized nit nor dem Inyan von nit Nishka werden in Golus. But in males, it's emphasized not just the idea of not to become sunk into the exile, but adrabayin einem in the Golus. Males conquer the Golus. Ish darke lichvish. So, why is he saying Nisyachsu kol ha-zechorim? Zechorim seem to bring out a whole nother aspect that the Rebbe is going to say. It's not just not saying the feminine, and not saying, but the Zechorim seems to more not to only emphasize like the not to become Nishka, but it seems like it gives the fighting Pirkei Rabbi Lezer. It's trying to bring out that there is Zecharim war there. Is the Bir Bazeh. The Yerida from the Ayin Nefesh in Mitzrayim is in Yonah Canal. What was the descent of the 70 souls in Mitzrayim? As I said before, Oiv zu poilen dem Bittel ubirur Euchen Welt is to impact that subjugation and sorting out also in the world. In the Ayin Omis, in the Ayin Sorim, there is to also change the world. That the world should be sorted out and subjugated. And also in the 70 nations, 70 Sorim. And in dem Bittel ubirur seine dort zwei Fanim. In this subjugation and sorting out, there are two ways. This is mitzad b'china zochar zo, the way it's from the masculine birur, which is zo, umedos is mitzad b'chinas nekeva malchus, and the way it's sorted out from the level of nekeva, the level of malchus. Zo and malchus. Mitzad b'chinas zochar is, from the level of zochar is ishtarkoi lichbosh. A man's nature is to conquer. Was kibush bechlal, when you say conquer, is ba'ofen shel hepech harotzen from them vemem is kovish. So you're going against the will of whom you are conquering. This haste means as der oifen habitl bederech kibush, that how is the subjugation when you conquer is as the Zach wird eingenommen, that the item becomes captured, taken in, und geht über in andere Schuss, and it goes over to another domain. Aber mitzad ihr mitzies wird sie nicht stande, but in her own entity, she's not changed. She's forced over to another. When you conquer them, you didn't change them. You just forcefully removed them from where they were to another place. But when you subjugate something by refining them, such a way that the item itself is changed, that's the mission and the way a woman works. She changes and she fixes the food as a that it should become fit for eating. She changes around. And the same thing is in the spiritual. We're talking about a man conquers and a woman refines, sorts out, changes. The same thing is in the spiritual matter. In the bittul from koichovim umazolis ubefrato ayin sorim, in the subjugation of the stars, the constellations, especially the 70 sorim, was from ze nemtzef the hashpo in Welt, from which all the flow in the world comes from them. Golus Mitzrayim, so Golus Mitzrayim hat aufgetan Megale gewen. So we're talking about the subjugation. We're trying to subjugate everything. So the Rebbe says like this: the exile of Mitzrayim accomplished and revealed, not only by Eden, by the Umm, also by the nation of the world, as the Ayin Sorin that they don't have any dominance, they don't have any rule in of themselves. They don't even have an own existence at all. Not only not a dominant rule or a ruling, but they don't even exist on their own. This haste, which means these wonders, these signs, and the fall of Pari in Egypt of Gepoil that impacted, as euch Pari Mitzrayim haben geglaubt, that also Pari Mitzrayim believed, und anerkennt, that they recognized as Ani Havaye B'kerev Haaretz, that I, Hashem, are in the middle of the land. So they recognize that in the Haaretz is Havaye. Und die Kechovim Mazolis and the stars and the constellations haben kein Shlita nit. They don't have any dominance. They seien nor kegarzen biyad hachitzev. They're only as a metal in the hands of one who carves with them. Und wie der Chartumim haben gesagt, Etzba Lekimi, as they actually said, this is a finger of God, which means they recognize that this all comes from Hashem. So this was a bittul that needed to be taking place in the world to change it around. And the bittul, there is a bittul of the masculine, which is by force, conquer, but he doesn't change them. And then there's the bittul of malchus, which is changes around in a way that it refines them. And Golus Mitzrayim changed the world because the world realized that not only don't the Kachov Mazolas have any power or dominance, but they can't even exist. Havaya B'kerev Oretz. And they said the Chartumim Etzbe Lekimi, it's Hashem's finger. Yud. Oter inyan tut sich oi beiker mitzad midas hamalchus. This idea that the world, the Ayin Sorim, the Goyim recognize, the Chartumim recognize that it's Hashem, that is mainly mitzad midas hamalchus. Vazi is der Shodesh from Mokim Uzman. That's the root of space and time. Und von der Hashpoah to the Ayin Sorim, and from this flow to the 70 officers, that comes all from Malchus. The Riber werd in zij der Herd, and therefore in them it is sensed, and by being sensed by the 70 officers, it's also in the 70 nations below. As Malchus that it's Hashem's governance rules everything. As they is they don't have their own, they don't have a self entity, they're not self existent. And their entity and their dominance is only from the level, because of level Malchus. That is mainly mitzad bechinas Malchus. Mitzad bechinas elikus vos is hecher from Welt. When we talk about the level of godliness, which is above world, generally we talk about Zoh, the masculine. Is there bittul ba'ofen, that subjugation is in a way as is in ganzen die talk in ort. If I metzies chutz v'menu yizbarach, that there is entirely, there's no space, there's no entity outside of him, blessed. Was mitzad der darge von elikus, this, from the perspective of this level of godliness, seinen the ayin sorim bebitl b'metzias, the 70 officers are non-existence. Afilu nit ha-metzias von gegarzen b'yad, they're not even an entity of being like a metal in the hand that carves it. Over there, you're saying they don't have any. The metal has no say. It's the person that's carving in with the metal, using the metal. But mitzad, the level of Zoh, it's not even that. The world, the Ayin Sorim don't even have the garzin, the adachaytzev. They're not even considered as a tool. They're not an entity at all. Das is b'dugmas inyan hakibush. That is similar to conquering. That means to conquer. Der bittel zeirer is nit mitzad in yonim u'mitziusam. It's not because of who they are, nor mitzad the lakus was is the gamri hecha from Welt, but it's because godliness, which is higher than the world, so they're a non-entity. But to change them around, that they should recognize the godliness of Hashem, that is the bitter, that's through the feminine, that is through Malchus. Yudalef. Und das ist der Chiluk bejachas zu der Pula, zu der Welt, and the Ayin Sorim. So the Rebbe is going to say, the Rebbe said there's two things. It's impacting you and impacting the world. So as far as impacting the Golus Mitzrayim, impacting the world and the 70 Sorim, zwischen dem Pirush in Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, the way the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer explains it. He says this, Yachsu kol ha-zechorim shishim v'sheish. He says the male 66 Yosef and al derech zeh dideya as Yaakov hishlim imohem. and also the opinion that Yaakov completed it. So that is one side. And the other opinion, they has Yocheved, the Mashlim, and the Minyan, that it was the feminine that made up the number. Mitzad them was Nesyachsu Kol HaZchorim Shishim V'Sheish V'Yosef V'Shnei Bonov. It's from this perspective that all the males, Shishim V'Sheish and Yosef and his two sons, is their Oiftu and Oifun Shel Kibush. So then the accomplishment, how did they win over? They conquered. Bittel, Mitziyusam Lagamri, destroying their existence totally. With the Medrash Zok Lagabe Yosef, as the Medrash says with regard to Yosef, Yosef Hurad Mitzrayma, that Yosef descended Hurad, it's from Loshen Hurad Roide, became the ruler Mitzrayma. Yosef then Shalot Behem. Omar, this is what the pasuk says. He shall rule from one ocean to the other ocean. Kavash behind, he conquered that. So since that descent comes from higher level, darf in them sein die Schleimus von der Beginne Elikus shel Meilen Mershtalshlus. That's why the wholesome, the completing that number needs to be from the level of godliness which is higher than Ishtalshlus, which is the Nesinas Koyach von HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bechinas Seva Kol Almin. Nichnas Imoim, Eibishter goes in with them, higher than world. Or the Rakoponim from Yaakov, the Neshama Atzilus, or at least Yaakov, the soul of Atzilus. We need that in order to conquer, to kibush, the Zchorim, as the Pirkei that Rabbi Lezer says. Mitzad Bechinas Malchus was their bittul is euch mitzad zeir mitzias gufa, but because of Malchus, which the subjugation is they that enters mitzias himself, und der Riber is das mer poyul de amuna badi umasayim lamato, and that's why it impacts more the belief by the nations below, so they themselves should feel it. But Paru Mitzrayim, also the shleimus von ayin nefesh aufgetan, so the completeness, the wholesomeness of the 70 souls was accomplished durch Yocheved. But Zidavke, specifically Yocheved Ishlimas Aminyan, she completed the number. Nit Hishlimo Imohem. Not the language is that she completed the number because Imohem with them, the Eibishter, but the minyan, the number 70 to impact them. That was done through Yocheved, the feminine, to bring about a change in themselves. Yud Beis. Yesh Leimar, as the Chelek zwischen the Pirushim is beherrscht to the Chiluki Darges from the Mefarshim Pirushim Edo. That the difference between the commentary is fitting to the different levels of those who explain this explanation. Rabbi says that the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer versus the Medrash, as the Rebbe will explain now. Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, Medrash Bechlal, is Agodah Shebetodah. That's the portion of the Agodah. Bosreiv Seides HaTorah, the majority of the Torah secrets, She Chochmas HaKabbalah, which is the wisdom of the Kabbalah, V'yidis Hashem, and knowledge of Hashem, Gnuzim Ba'agodas are hidden in the Agodas. Is there Chelek HaTorah was his Hecher from his Slapshus in Olam. That's the portion of Torah which is higher than from dressing up in the world. Ubemela, and therefore, Hod dort der Metzias ha'olam kei chashivas nit. So therefore, the world existence has no importance over there. In the part of Torah in Agoda, which is higher than world. The father is loit zei der ikar hapirush. So according to the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, the Medrash, the main interpretation as HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nichnas imam b'minyan, that it's Hashem that went into the count with them in the 70. Was mitzad them is their kibush and an oifum from bittul legamri from the ayin sorim, that from this, because it was HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the conquering was in a way that it totally negated the 70 nations. Mitzad miforshat Torah v'sot mashayches zu mikra, those commentaries of the Torah which have a connection to Pasuk, to the Chumash, Pasis Ba'asiyah, that's is brought down in the Tanya, that Mikra is Ba'asiyah, in the Kutei Torah, the Rebbe says, Aber Zeir Pirush is nit legamri al derech hapshat, but they're not completely ab derech hapshat. Hot nit azoifel or that Pirush as HaKadosh Baruch Hu nichnas imon. So over there, it doesn't have so much room for explaining it that the Eberster went to Kodesh Baruch Hu, der Bittel v'kibush von Welt mitzad b'chinas sevu kol ha'almin, the negation and the conquering of the world from the perspective of surrounding the world, was is l'mayla mishtalshlus, which is totally higher than ishtalshlus. So they explain as Yaakov hishli memoim, that it was Yaakov that made up with them. Was Yaakov Yud Ekev werd nimshach in biyah lidei hashvotim. The Yaakov Yud Ekev, he extends in biyah through the shvotim. Choch gufe is nit yored, although he himself does not descend. Umitzidoi, and from Yaakov's perspective, hat der Bittel vom Welt epes hashayches zum Metzias Olam Gufa. The negation of the world has somewhat of a connection to Metzias Olam itself, because it's like a higher than it's an Atzilus, but it goes to Biyah through the Shvatim. So it's a connection between Yaakov and Biyah, because at least through the Shvatim it comes there. So since there is a connection, so there is a bittul, but it is connected to the Metzias of the world. Loid Pirush Rashi Pshuta Mikra Mamish. But according to Rashi's Pshat, which is the literal actual Pshat, was is verbunden mit Asiya Mamish, which is tied to actually the level of Asiya, hört sich on der Bittel von Welt mitzad ihr Schörisch Gufa. Over there, you sense the negation of the world, not from somewhere else, not from HaKadosh Baruch Hu or from Yaakov, but from the root of the world itself, from Malchus. Was demult is the bittul merbe premiums. Then the bittul, the sorting out in the bittul is more in an inner. Farbundu mit the Metzias Gufa, it's tied to the Metzias itself. Mitzad them is their pirush, and for this, from that perspective, from the Pshuta Shel Mikra, is as Yecheved Ishlima Minyan Shel Yisrael, that Yecheved is the one that made up and completed the Minyan of the Yid. And das is Masim mit der Mekuven from Golus V'Yitzias Mitzrayim. This fits in with the intent of exile and exit of Egypt, which is a Matan Torah. Was damals hat sich aufgetan, nicht nur der Bittel vom Welt. It's not only that the world became negated, subjugated, nor euch din sinas koyach, but also the power was given by Matan Torah as Achdus Havaye, the union of Hashem, soll der Herd werden in der Metzias von Welt mitzad Asma Vinyona, that it should be sensed in the world from the existence of the world, from its own essence, through its own bitter. That is dafke through Yechevet Malchus. With those hat sich ausgedrückt Matan Torah Gufa, as it is expressed in Matan Torah itself. Av Neisef was them was Sivur Leitzavach Oif Leiporach Sher Lego. In addition to the fact that a bird did not squeak and did not scream, and a bird did not fly, and a goat did not, an ox did not make noise, etc. Is der Koil von a Neuche Havai gekommen? That voice came from alle Ruchas Oilum Shemayim Voretz, came from all four corners of the world of Shemayim Voretz, which means the world itself expressed Matan Torah, the subjugation. Derech v'yeuch der Zelt in Gemara, and also similar There's later in the Gemara as B'shas Matan Torah that Matan Torah Koiloi Hoilech Mesoifa Olam Atzoifa. The voice of Hashem would go from one end of the world to the other end. Seine Dumas Olam geworden erschrocken. So the nations of the world got scared. Und gekommen zu Bilam und fragen. And they came to Bilam to ask. Und wenn hat sich gesagt, Hashem ois la'ame yitain. Hashem gives strength, the Torah to his people. Hashem ois la'ame yitain. Hashem has given, hat sie beruhigt und gesagt. So he calmed them down. Hashem yivorech hasame b'sholom. Hashem will bless his people with peace. So now the Rebbe brings it out to our generation, just like Yecheved is the one that made it up over there. Same thing is the lesson for our generation. Gimel, Shem v'dos is given by Golus Mitzrayim, just as it was by the exile of Egypt. As Yecheved Dafki Shlimas Aminyan, it was Dafki Yecheved who completed the number 70. Durch ihr hat sich aufgetan der Bittel vom Welt mitzad Mitzias Olam Gufa. It's through Yecheved that the subjugation of the world came from the existence of the world itself, not from something outside conquering, but the world itself became refined and was bottled. Similar, it's also in this exile, this last exile, was the hakdome to the Gula, which is the introduction, the preparation for the future redemption. When es wird sein der Matze from Vero kol Bosur goimer kipi Hashem diber. All flesh will see, as der Geshem ha'olam atzmei wird nisbarer werden und senden pi Havaya. The physicality of the world itself will be sorted out and see pi Hashem. So this is the refinement, not as a conquering, but the world itself, the Basar will realize. When a Welchem is zogt, as it is sein, about which is said, that it'll be Kimitzeschem Eretz Mitzrayim Aren and the Flois, that the miracles will be like the days when of Egypt, which is why Yechevet was Beschar Beschus Noshim Sitkoni Yeshaboisa Ador Nigalu Yisrael Mitzrayim. It was the reward and in their merit of the women of that generation that the Yidden, the Jews, were let out, freed from Mitzrayim. Likewise, in the coming redemption, close by, through Durch der Avodah, from Sheyu B'nai Yisrael, through the service of the women and daughters of Israel. But the Far Zetman, that's why you see, as the Gimel Mitzvahs seinen übergegeben geworden, zu Sheyu B'nai Yisrael, the three mitzvahs that have been given over to the women and daughters of Israel, had Lokas Neder Shabbos Kodesh v'Yom Tov, the lighting for the holy Shabbos and Yom Tov, the candles, and the Challah, which is the Kashrus Achillah, the making sure that food and drink are kosher. Und Taras HaMishpacha seine Beifen zeh. They are also in such a way. They're in such a way. The mitzvahs are now seine Peulas für seine verbunden. These mitzvahs above are activities that are tied with with such needs of man, of humans, which are necessary just to be a settled place, that the Eibusha created the world as a settled place. Non-Jews need to also do the same things. Lichtigkeit, need light, not to trip over a wood or a stone, which that's the nation of the world too. Everybody has to eat family life. So these are the mitzvahs that they do have, but the Nishei B'nai Yisrael were given over these mitzvahs. The Avodah of Nishei B'nai Yisrael is as these Zelbe Peulas, that the same activities on Geton werden Davke Vayigash that should be done in a Jewish way. Adlokas Haned is verbunden mit Shabbos v'Yom Tov. Lighting the candle, the light is associated with Shabbos and Yom Tov. Kashrus, Achilus, eating, drink is kosher. Und Taras HaMishpacha, family life should be purity. Das is the Achona, is the preparation as Gashmi Sa'ilum Gufa, that the physicality of the world itself at Nizdachich will be refined, bis v'ro kol bosar yachdav kipi Hashem diber, till the extent that all flesh will see together that it's Hashem's mouth who has spoken. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Vayigash Tovshin Lamed Beis.